Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started because we definitely want to keep this webinar to an hour. So welcome, my name is Robin Lyshenko, and this is our webinar for our Community Climate Resilience Grant Competition. The grant competition is part of the Consortium for Climate Risk in the Urban Northeast, and this is our very first time running a competition like this, so we're really excited to be doing this, and we're happy to be trying to do this informational webinar. So let me just go to the agenda just to give you guys a sense of what we're up for tonight. And just, first of all, again, thank you everyone for joining. So we're going to just spend a couple minutes with introductions. We'll have the folks who are part of the CCRUN team, but not everyone's here, but we'll have quite a few of them. And we'll just do a very short hello and just giving a sense what university you're at and what area you work in on CCRUN. And then we'll spend a little bit of time with, then we have actually a Slido where we're going to ask participants to give us a little bit of information about very, very briefly where they're from and so forth. And then we'll do a little introduction to the CCRUN itself, what it is, what it's about. And then we'll spend the bulk of the time of the sort of formal presentation type time, really kind of going through the grant competition, kind of what the overview of it and sort of what we're asking for with the LOIs that'll be coming due around June 20th, and then just a little bit of other information about timeline, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So okay, I think we could go to the next slide. And just in terms of questions, I think what we're going to do is just please put questions in the chat as you have questions, and we'll certainly be holding questions, and that's really what we want to do is really devote a lot of the webinar time to really asking questions and making sure everyone's super clear. So let's just give a quick, so this is just the CCRUN team. And then if I could just ask, I've already introduced myself, I'm at Rutgers and I work in climate resilience, climate adaptation. And I'm gonna ask some of the other members. So maybe let me just start with, I'll just start with Radley, and then we'll go to the other folks who are part of CCRUN, just to say hello.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, yeah, Radley Horton. I'm a climate scientist at Columbia, working on extreme events, and I'm really excited that Robin and Marjorie and others have spearheaded this effort, and excited to share this hour and hopefully more with you. Do you want us to call in the next person, Robin? Maybe it's better if you do it, since I think you have a little better sense of who's on.
I'll go ahead. Okay, so Marjorie, how about if you go next, since you were mentioned?
Oh, hi there, Marjorie Kaplan. I'm with I'm the Associate Director of Rutgers Climate Institute, and I'm part of the Rutgers team helping Robin and Katie with this initiative. Thanks for joining us.
And Jeannie just popped up, so Jean, you can.
Hi everybody. I'm Jean Herb. I'm also with Rutgers University and happy to be part of this team.
Great. And then I see Bill.
Sure, thanks. I'm Bill Selecki. I'm a geographer at City University of New York, Hunter College. A lot of my work is looking at adaptation and resiliency programs, effectiveness, and community engagement.
Okay, and then Katie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Can. I am serving as the coordinator of this grant competition this year, and I am a PhD student in geography at Rutgers University, assisting Dr. Lyshenko with the equity portion of the CCRUN research.
Thanks, everyone. So we have a couple more. There may be one or two other members of CCRUN that may pop in, but that gives you a little bit of a taste, and obviously you can see the picture that there's a few more folks. If we can go to the next slide. What we're going to do is this is a brief Slido survey that Katie actually set up. So Katie, can you just give a little explanation if needed?
Yes, absolutely, everyone. So I'm going to be posting this in the chat. There's multiple ways to get to this Slido. If you're on a computer, a desktop, or a laptop, you can go ahead and use your browser to type in slido.com, and then you will enter the hashtag CCRUN to get access to our poll that we're just going to open in one moment. If you have a smartphone on you, you can also use this QR code and go ahead and scan that with your phone, and then you'll have access to the poll.
Okay, great. So we can open the poll. So it looks like we're, okay, great. So we're getting some answers. That's good. All right, and then if we want to go ahead with the next question. So this is actually a kind of a very short open-ended question, not a long essay, but asking about climate-related hazards that are of greatest concern for your community. So if you could just give a sentence or two answer to that, that would be really helpful for us. And I just got a message, just a sort of logistical, Katie, that a few people for some reason weren't able to answer the first question. I don't know if it's still open, if people could still answer that one.
Definitely. I'll have to go back and open it again, and it will close this one momentarily. So we'll give this one just 10 more seconds if you're entering something, and then I'll flip back to the first so we can see where you're all located.
Great.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and flip back. That'll reopen the first question of the poll.
Okay, great. So let us know if anyone's not able to access. Okay, great. So I think we have a little bit of a sense, at least. I'm hoping people were able to access it this time. And maybe go back to the result, the next result, that just from in real time, what's stressing people out. I know that my research team was in not South Jersey, they were in coastal Jersey just a couple days ago, and we're interviewing someone looking out the window and realized they had to leave very quickly because the car was going to be stuck because of the flash flooding that was happening. So clearly an issue that's definitely on our minds right now. So why don't we go to the next slide? All right, so I'm going to just turn it over just for a couple minutes to Radley to talk a little bit about CCRUN itself and just give you guys a little bit of a sense of what CCRUN is, what CCRUN's about.
Thanks, Robin. So the Consortium for Climate Risk in the Urban Northeast, or CCRUN, has been around now for a little over 10 years. It's part of a regional program that the federal agency, the NOAA Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration runs. So basically, it's about providing science information for example, about things like heat waves, flooding, a lot of the hazards that you all just identified, but also thinking about impacts, including on vulnerable communities, on our infrastructure, on key sectors of these extreme weather events, which are becoming more common in many cases, as you all know, with climate change. But what makes the program really special is that it doesn't end like a lot of federal programs with just handing over science information, if you will. This program is really about working with communities that have ideas of what the right solutions are for climate change, to reduce vulnerability, and to create better futures. So it's really all about that kind of interaction with communities and experts on the ground, integrating with some of that science information of various types. And our team is very diverse, as you can see here, includes engineers, people doing urban design, social scientists, and thinking about some of the types of hazards that you all just described. So we could quickly go to the next slide. Thank you. And yeah, just to sort of quickly give a few examples of some of the things we worked on after Hurricane Sandy, which of course was so devastating. CCRUN played a pretty key role in helping New York City and surrounding municipalities understand how likely those types of events like flooding are and how climate change is making them more common, but also really think about efforts to build back better, to become more resilient. And of course, there were some successes, but also some failures in that regard. So much more needs to be done. And there's always that risk sometimes that the wrong resilience strategies could actually make things worse for some communities. So we recognize that there's so much more to do. And as we'll hear, a lot of this opportunity we're going to talk about tonight is really about co-production, working with you all towards better solutions. But yeah, so worked on Sandy, Franco in Philadelphia down at Drexel, and his team have been working on ways to think about the dual risks of, say, a heat wave at the same time as so many people are suffering from COVID. How can we develop strategies that reduce vulnerability in those contexts? Looking at mapping of heat waves, Patricia, our colleague, thinking about reducing some of those heat vulnerabilities, and then looking at mapping and reducing risk to flooding of various types too. So that's just a small snapshot of some of the types of things that we work on. And then if we could just quickly go to the next slide, the geography of this particular NOAA program, which has about 10 of these around the country. We lead the one that focuses on the Northeast. As you can kind of see in what's highlighted in green here, it's sort of that somewhat coastal, high population density area running from a little south of Philadelphia up to Boston and points north. So we think about those sort of urban and surrounding systems, shared infrastructure, large population vulnerability, and a lot of climate hazards and risks, a lot of shared knowledge and expertise as well. So really excited to hand it over back to Robin, but just wanted to give a little bit of background there on CCRUN. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Radley. So we can go to the next slide. So just very briefly, so Radley already used the word co-production. We're very strongly interested in working with stakeholders. These are just a very few of the groups that we've worked with and are beginning to work with more. And so, but just in terms of how we're thinking about stakeholder engagement, we sort of, I think, three maybe pillars or three ideas. This idea of knowledge exchange, and there's a very active ongoing process, the knowledge exchange in New York City that some folks on the call may have already be participating in. But we've sort of connected with that effort, but that sort of idea of that kind of knowledge exchange, that sort of interchange between researchers and communities is really critical for the work, and as well as other types of stakeholders. Also, in terms of engagement and stakeholder engagement, we really want to think about capacity building. And one of the goals of this grant competition itself is that idea of capacity building, of promoting community groups to be more able and capable of accessing climate services, accessing information, developing vulnerability solutions, resilient solutions, and so forth. But then also, thinking about needs assessment and that getting into that space and thinking about, the salience and legitimacy of the climate information that we're producing, making sure that that information is meaningful to communities, is useful to communities. And again, running the competition, it is really about what do communities need, what do they want, what kinds of projects do they want to have happen. It's very much, I think, in some ways, almost like flipping the script a little bit. And so let me talk a little bit about flipping the script on research. That is, let me finish that sentence before I move on. So let's just talk a little bit about the competition itself. So as we sort of have advertised and have lured you guys here to the webinar, it's a community climate resilience competition. We'll be awarding 4 grants, $25,000 each to nonprofits. It has to be a 501(c)(3) organizations. And we're thinking about organizations who are working with socially vulnerable groups, working on social vulnerability in that space, that very, very broad space of social vulnerability, on projects that are going to prepare communities to better be able to respond, react, prepare for, be ready for climate hazards of all types. So let's move on to the next slide. Just in terms of, so we really are, this competition is actually being led by the equity work group within CCRUN. And we really have very much in thinking about this competition and thinking about how, what we want to advance and thinking about dimensions of equity. So thinking about the projects that will, in some ways, address different dimensions of equity, enhance equity around, sort of reducing disparities, sort of what we think about as distributive equity, reducing those disparities across neighborhoods, communities, but then also thinking about equity in other ways. And this framework actually comes out of some NPCC work and prior work that we've done around equity that was actually co-produced, and that's why I've got the communities listed here, the community groups listed, Uprose, We Act, and The Point, who helped us actually co-produce this framework, which was then used in NPCC. So we're very much like this grant competition itself is very much, it has roots in other work that we've done, and just really want to acknowledge that the great roles that groups have already played and advancing our thinking so meaningfully around the idea that you need not just distributive equity, but you also need contextual equity. You need to think about social, political, economic factors that are really kind of shaping the vulnerabilities, contributing to those vulnerabilities. And that includes things like structural racism. And then also thinking about procedural equity and ways to use this competition, use this as an opportunity to expand the robustness and extent of participation, getting the community voices into the room, expanding, as Jeannie has such great work at the seat at the table, adding those seats and making sure that those seats are present. So really that, in thinking about, we're really thinking about projects that can play on the different dimensions of equity and push forward. We can go to the next slide. So just in terms of the program approach, that's kind of our guiding framework, the equity framework, and this idea of, as we already mentioned, co-production, co-development of community relevant knowledge. I already mentioned we'll do 4 awards for this. This is our first year doing it. And we hope to be able to do it again, but right now this is sort of our first year, our pilot year. And then for the way the competition will work is that each grant recipient will propose a project, and I'll talk a little bit more about service areas and where spaces to propose projects, but it's the idea that a CCRUN team member that will then work with the community, and that team member will support the community grantees project. So it's really very much a partnership, and we have like kind of just to kind of keep things bounded, and so everyone kind of knows where everyone's coming from. We'll talk about different service areas where when you apply for the grant, to sort of identify a service area where you'd specifically like to work with a CCRUN member. And then the deliverables themselves, we're not going to presume what the deliverables are, but that's going to be part of the application process and part of sort of the discussion around, is a white paper meaningful? Is a grant application meaningful? Is some blog posts? I mean, the idea is meaningful deliverables that are meaningful for the grantee, and really making it sort of flipping that script and making it meaningful for as meaningful as possible for the community groups that are awardees. So if we could go to the next slide. So just in terms of the service area, so this probably seems a little bit complicated, but the idea is that as you're thinking about what makes sense for your group and what makes sense to apply for, we wanted to give you kind of a menu of spaces, and really, again, to really emphasize like the breadth of the possibilities of this competition. So just in terms of service area, when I'll talk in detail about these in a moment, but just the overview of them, it's the idea that one of the spaces that we might want to give support is if you're already in the process, if maybe you have a project that you want to do and you really need project design support, or you're maybe even getting at a space where you're really looking for funding, but having support for developing grant applications and needing getting into that kind of space. There's also, so that's sort of service area 1. Area 2 is in the space of climate services, identifying data needs, research needs, training needs, thinking about climate adaptation tools, planning tools, data sets that you might need, even creation with vulnerability mapping and thinking about with those maps. And I know that the full call for proposals is in, and there's the service categories. There's more text inside the service category. So I don't want to just read the text because you have those service categories, but that's part of what we really want to do with the Q&A as well, is start to answer questions about those service categories. So let me continue just with a kind of little overview. So just in the space of climate services, so thinking about if you're making vulnerability mapping, it wouldn't be so much that we would let's collect the data to create a new vulnerability map, but maybe you've already identified or want help identifying existing data sets that you can use to develop vulnerability maps and develop them, sort of in a more sort of clear way, a way that's, more clearly communicated or more clear to your constituents. Also thinking about specifically areas that we'd be particularly interested in working with would be working on health in the sort of health risk space, so sort of supporting development and information related to health risks associated with climate hazards and exposure. And we have a health specialist, although she couldn't be on the call tonight, Patricia Fabian, who's on our team, who's particularly interested in working, and her work is particularly focused on heat and health and also air quality. So those are a couple spaces that would be relevant. And then the last category, thinking about nature-based solutions. I'm not sure if any of the groups on tonight are in that area. I'm thinking in terms of developing projects that would implement nature-based solutions for adaptation, but that's Franco Montalto, who's also, I don't believe, able to be on the call tonight, but I noticed there's quite a few groups from Philadelphia, so that may have been his influence in getting some folks to join the call. And so that's sort of his space in that nature-based solution space. So just a little bit of, and then of course we have, a lot of expertise in the climate space itself. So any need for climate data, that would be in Radley's group. So just there's a lot here, and we can definitely answer questions. So I won't go into too much more, because in a way I feel like sometimes when I'm working with my graduate students and so forth, I sort of like to leave things a little bit vague, because I feel like that opens the ideas, opens up the space for ideas. And this is really, I think, just very strongly, before I talk about service area 3, but it's a menu that we really tried to design it to allow maximum creativity, maximum flexibility for groups to think about, identify what they really would like to do, and hopefully one of these service categories can then pair with. But definitely we have a couple of weeks before the LOIs are due, the letters of intent, and so we're definitely here, and that's part of doing this webinar, but also we're available to answer questions over these next few weeks as stuff starts to germinate. And if you want to run an idea by Katie, we'll share contact information, but Katie's our lead sort of project manager, to sort of reaching out to her and trying to make sure that there's a match as the letters of intent start to come in. But then finally, there's a really important service category in the space of community outreach and education. So thinking about if there's workshops, like if your group wanted to do a series of workshops, that would be something that we could help plan and facilitate, or some kind of climate information seminars, getting information out to different spaces, that we could definitely facilitate something like that. And then also, I think just network building, like that is actually one of the other reasons their grant competition has almost an entire focus on network building. And so that we definitely want that. If we could help with building a network that is contributing to climate information exchange or contributing to environmental justice goals in some space that maybe isn't yet networked in, or bringing into networks that maybe exist already, but maybe bringing new members into those networks. So that would certainly be something that we would be interested in contributing to. So we can go to the next slide. There'll definitely be time for questions. So just in terms of how we're thinking about beyond sort of fitting into a service category and making sure, I think one of the biggest questions will be to make sure that we have expertise that matches the interests of the group, and kind of making sure that that's a good match. And that will be sort of, and then some, hopefully some regional diversity. You saw the regional diversity of the CCRUN itself, spanning, many states. So trying to sort of, if possible, have some regional diversity. But then other priorities, thinking about serving communities that are experiencing climate risks, and sort of this idea of double exposure, compounded climate risks, building community capacity and to promote climate preparedness, promote resiliency, identifying strategies that also contribute to meeting the needs of the broader community. So sort of strategies that actually engage with equity in themselves, so that we're not, sort of undermining some groups by promoting strategies that may help some at the expense of others. But then also thinking about potential for history of sector partnerships, or that commitment to sort of thinking about partnerships and thinking about making sure that the work that happens actually, has sort of reaches maybe a slightly wider network. So let's go ahead with, I think, the next slide. Okay, so just in terms of the timeline, I'm going to actually turn it over to Katie now to kind of lead us to some of the details.
Hi, everyone. So thanks so much for joining this webinar again today. This kind of represents our official formal opening of the grant application period. And so moving on from here, we have some events over the course of the summer. We're asking that all interested applicants submit a letter of intent, or an LOI, via a Google form that I'll review in a moment, by June 20th. We have a deadline of 5 p.m., but all of that information is in that broader call for proposal that I just pasted in the chat there. And so just as an overview, but like I said, I'll dig into this momentarily. The LOIs are pretty broad brushing. We're just asking for information about your organization, confirmation of a 501c3 status, information about the community where you plan to work, and just a brief discussion of the problem or topic that you hope to address with your with your project, I should say. And that's not to exceed 500 words, so it's not too long of a description, but maybe just thinking about what communities you intend to work with. If you have a desired deliverable that you want to sketch out at this time, we would love to hear about it, but it's not required. And then also the intended CCRUN subcategory where you see your project fitting into. So that's due on June 20th, as I mentioned. The CCRUN team will review the LOIs and get back to all applicable applicants by July 11th. At which point we'll send an invitation to a full proposal. And that full proposal will really build on the work that has already been submitted in the LOI, but will give all applicants a chance to kind of expand and further develop their project goals to share with the CCRUN team. So that description will ask you to kind of flesh out the goals and explain in the detail what weather and climate hazards the project is addressing, and how the project will advance preparedness or resilience, a specific work plan, and also description of the stakeholders to be engaged, as well as anticipated data and information needs. We'll also ask about the composition of the project team, including some bios of people that will work with you on the project, and also a draft budget that you intend to work with. So and that full proposal will then be due on the 1st of August in 2022, this summer. And we'll expect to make final decisions by the end of the month, by the end of August, with the intention of the grant period starting the 1st of October and running through the last day of September next year in 2023. And as Robin kind of mentioned, over this period, the grantees will hopefully maintain regular communication, I should say, with a partner researcher at CCRUN. Also submit short biannual progress reports, we'll have some quarterly meetings where the grantees can meet each other and share the results of their projects. And then additional deliverables will be co-produced and co-developed in the early stages of the grant period with researchers from the CCRUN team and your project and grantee projects as well. So with that, I'm going to move into LOI review, and I'll paste this in the chat. But if you want to follow along, we're asking all letters of intent to be submitted via Google form. So that right there is the link to the Google form. And again, I'm pasting that in the chat so you have it live. And also there is a QR code right there in case that is helpful. I'm going to switch to this letter of intent form. This is what you should see when you open it up. So it's a simple Google form. As I mentioned, it's pretty broad from 30,000 feet, just an overview of your project. We're asking for the organization name and website. Again, the 501c3 status documentation. So typically that's an IRS designation letter, which you can upload right here to the form. But if that's not possible, I would just ask you to send it to me via email, and that's completely fine as well. We ask for contact person for this part of the process. It doesn't necessarily need to be the project lead, but whoever is best to get in contact over the course of this application period, their email, cell phone number, or any type of phone, I should say. The project location, so that's kind of where the community is based that you're intending to work with within that CCRUN geography that we shared at the beginning of this presentation. And then the brief discussion of your problem topic. So this is just specific information about the community, where the work will take place, and again, those overall project goals. And we intend to keep this kind of short and sweet, just a broad overview, so we can kind of make sure that this is fitting into one of the service categories that we also ask you to select in this next question. So again, the detailed information about the service categories can be found on our website in the full call for proposals, which was also pasted in the chat and Robin reviewed. But these categories fit within the 3 broader service areas of research, design, and grant support. The second one is climate services, data identification, research and training, and the third is community outreach and education. So we ask that you just select what you're thinking of with this broad description of the project, and then if you need to change or get more specific in the full application, that's completely fine as well. This is kind of just an idea of where you expect to go. So this is pretty much it. Once you hit submit, we'll give it a review and we'll get back to all of the applicable applicants to submit a full application later in the summer. And with that, I will flip back. And again, please continue to post any questions in the chat, and we'll move to that period of the program right now and hopefully respond to every question that you all have.
Great, thank you for that overview, Katie. And I think our plan is also for the proposals to be, the full proposals to come through Google Form, and we're really going to work on not making it a huge arduous thing. Obviously we need more detail than the letter of intent, and but getting a sense of who would be on the team, a little bit longer work plan, a budget. We'll put up a budget template, so that'll be fairly, hopefully a fairly light lift to get that, go from the LOI to the proposal, because I know it's not a long turnaround time between those two, and that was deliberate, so that people aren't spending long periods of time with putting together the proposal. That the intent is to make it sort of as user friendly as possible. So I think we're open now for questions, and I would also like to, if any of the other CCRUN folks want to just hop in, if there's anything to elaborate around around anything that we said, and then if there's any questions coming up. I'm not quite monitoring the questions right now, but if people have questions, please feel free to ask. So I see a question from someone regarding grants, numbers of grants. The plan is to do 4 grants, $25,000 each. One thing I just wanted to note about the $25,000 budget is that budget entirely is to be spent by the community group. There's no budgeting. Your budget won't include any time from the CCRUN side. The CCRUN side is covering that time, so that just think about this as a grant, and then there's sort of rules within the full LOI around indirect costs and things like that. So that's but that will be, that's the plan for this time around. Okay, then there's a question regarding service areas. Yes, that's the whole idea with the service areas. Thank you so much. That's a really good question. That the idea with the service areas is so that it's really kind of clear up front, like you're doing a project, your project can be any project, your project can be designed as you want, the project that you think needs to be done. And then the idea is to apply under these service areas where this is the area that you would like to work with us on. So that if, for example, if you want to do a project that's building networks, that would be where you would apply. So that's kind of what the service areas, that was the terminology that we, talking with another group that's doing the grants to use, but it can be a little bit confusing. So thank you so much for asking that question.
And Robin, could I just jump in for a second? I think, part of it, which you implied, is that it'll be possible. So yeah, so focus around the type of work you want to be doing. In the assistance that you're seeking from CCRUN folks, you can seek some things that may not fit perfectly under what you've selected, right? So you might focus on health, but want to end up working with someone at CCRUN who themselves isn't necessarily working on health, if it makes sense. You know, it can be more flexible, I think, in terms of how you engage the CCRUN community. Would you agree with that, Robin and Katie?
Yeah, it's definitely that. I think the reason for doing the service categories is that it really kind of makes it almost just to make it as clear as possible, like where your group wants to work and where we can work with you. So it isn't, so just to, I think it makes it just very as transparent and clear at the beginning that this is the space where you guys feel you need our, you know, sort of, you want to partner with us and we want to partner with you. So we know what, you know, kind of what's going to happen. And I think it just to, I guess, almost just make it a little bit, make everything run a little bit more smoothly. Is the status pending? Will you be allowed to participate? I think it does need to, it needs to have, so you can definitely apply but if you'll get the status, if you're sure that the status will come through when the grant starts, because I think that's the issue, that the award itself needs to go to a 503c. So that's our, you know, that's kind of why that's there. So if you're like, if it's pending it, but if you know it's coming, like if it's like, oh, we know it's coming August 1st, we've already, you know, we've got everything lined up and it's on, you know, it's in the mail, so to speak. But if that status takes a while, then it may not make sense to apply if you know you won't have the status for like, you know, or like kind of September, when we'll be starting to sort of get the funding in place for the groups. So I'm seeing it. I don't know if there's, I'm looking for other questions. Okay. So this question, this is, would the grant support project management activities for a major grant that we already have to implement climate resilient solutions in affordable housing? I mean, I would say that if it's, I think a grant that you already have is fine, but I think the main thing would be that it does need to meet the idea that there's a partnership and a collaboration with CCRUN in the work. And so we actually were on it when we were on the call with this group who's been doing these for a very long time. They gave us an example of what was an unsuccessful grant that went through, where it was a group that basically had a project in place and simply just wanted the money to do their project, and had frankly no interest in working with the RISA, that was just seeing it as a grant. And so so as long as there's an engagement and work with RISA with our team, with our CCRUN team, I think we're open to we're open to something that could exist inside a project that's already ongoing, definitely, as long as we'd have that sort of partnership type engagement with the team. I'm just looking if there's any other questions. Or any other thoughts from in fact, if there's any clarification needed on any of the questions. So this is a 1 year, it's our first year doing this, and we're going to be doing this. So this is a 1 year, this competition is a 1 year competition. And so there isn't any guarantee that we'll have a second year or a third year, but I will say the other RISA that does them has been running the competition for more than 10 years now. And so our sort of hope is that this pilot will be a successful pilot, and this will be something that we'll continue to do beyond this first year. But definitely we only at this point only have the first year of funding. So let me see. There's a couple. I'm just sorry, I'm a little slow. Okay. So the question is, if we are affiliated or part of one of the schools in CCRUN, can we apply? Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. I mean, we do, the affiliation of the group itself needs to be a 501(c) organization. So I don't think like a university wouldn't be eligible in that doesn't fit that category of organization. But if you're affiliated and you're connected with and you're applying via one of the an organization, that would absolutely be fine. It's just that the grant itself would be coming from the organization. Okay, then there's a question about flexibility, the categories. We are limiting it to there is flexibility in terms of the type of service work that we want to do with you, but we are going to need to limit it to one category as at least certainly like the primary engagement. And then there may be, maybe say your primary engagement is you want to do a series of webinars, but you need some support with climate data. So then I think definitely there is, I think Radley alluded to this already, that there is a flexibility like to sort of, pull from some of the other menu, like if you want some of the things that you might want, say you want climate data that would support the webinars that you want to do. But I think choosing the primary service category is really important because that's how we're going to match the group to the CCRUN team members. Okay, where will I see? Okay, so we have in the full proposal is, so Casey, sorry, Katie. I called you Casey. Katie just uploaded it. Okay, so you're good. So it's fully listed out in the service categories. All right. Okay, I'm getting there. A list of CCRUN staff who could be involved. Okay, so okay, yeah, no. So the CCRUN, I think just the CCRUN link for the actual CCRUN team, and I don't believe Malgosia was able to come, but Malgosia is part of our team. And so that would probably be just taking a look at the basic CCRUN website itself to get a sense of the CCRUN team members. Thank you. Thanks, Katie. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes for other questions. These are great questions coming in. Yes, the answer is yes. So can the project encompass surrounding counties of Philadelphia, the greater Philadelphia? Yes, absolutely. The idea when we showed the first, Katie, would you mind going back over to the map, the CCRUN map, regional map, if we could go backwards. And we could just pull up the map again. So, oh, there it is. Okay, great. Yeah, so that looks like a big chunk of Philadelphia, maybe all the way to Harrisburg almost is in our region. So absolutely, the answer is absolutely yes, that it doesn't have to be a neighborhood. It can certainly be a project that spans, a chunk of a metro region. That's absolutely fine. Maybe announced as a sponsor and a municipality as a co-sponsor. I think I think that would be fine if the application comes in through a nonprofit and is partnered with a municipality. That's absolutely fine. I know municipalities themselves don't have the 501(c)(3) status because they do lots more than that. But that's perfectly fine if there's if it's coming in with a municipal partner, like partners and so forth are perfectly fine. And in fact, that's great if you already have a set of partners that you're thinking about, and then coming through the one entity just to make just to make it clear that it's coming through a 501(c), and then it would be paid for. So then there's a couple more questions.
We have some questions on the Slido that are here. There's some we've already gotten to, but
great. Okay, let me just take a look at those. Flexibility, yeah. So I think I guess let me just reiterate that, because I think that's really an important point, that we do need you to pick a primary category, but it's fine to then have some sub elements of another category, but really identifying the primary category that's going to be really critical for helping us with the match. For organizations with limited capacity, is partnering with a larger or separate organization possible to apply for funds? That's fine. I think just again, like coming from a 501(c), it could be a partnership with two or three or a set of them. I think, and so even like it could be even some kind of like a boundary organization that may connect up several several organizations, like an alliance type entity? So the answer is yes, definitely. That choosing, having that, having a partner in the process is definitely fine. Expectations of the researchers providing, what are the expectations of the researchers' time and effort providing technical assistance to the grantee? I mean, that's an interesting question. I think that in terms of, how much time, probably, it may be sort of an engagement that's, sort of, bi-monthly type of engagement. It's definitely not going to be a situation where all of a sudden you've got a researcher working for you for 20 hours a week. I think like that's not going to be an expectation. So, and I think that's part of the decision around selecting service categories, so that we were really clear, like there'll be like, a specific engagement that may take, a few hours a week, or a couple hours a month, or, in that sort of space. But so really kind of we want to have an engagement that doesn't overtax, like the whole grant program. The idea is we don't want to overtax the grantees, and we don't want to overtax ourselves. We want to be really mindful. $25,000, isn't a huge amount of money. It's a small grant. We didn't call it the small grant competition. We're calling it the Community Climate Resilience Competition. But we want to be sort of, I think, again, just really mindful of what the scope of a grant like that should be in terms of effort and partnership time. So other questions? Let me see if there's any other questions. Not sure if I'm missing any questions that have come in.
I think we've gotten to all of them that I can see, but if anybody has any last ones or something that needs to be clarified, post it.
Yeah, if people want further clarification. On anything. So I guess as people are thinking, I'll just say, so over these next 3 weeks, we've got, all the way up until June 20th for the LOIs to be due. And there, as you saw there, it's a Google form, so it should be a pretty straightforward application. But we just want to really encourage you to please reach out to us. You've got the website, we've got the contact. So Katie's our primary contact, and her contact info is I'll get to that question in a second. And so just as you're starting to germinate ideas and so forth, that's sort of making sure that you're you're in contact with us. Feel free to be in contact with us, and kind of, we're happy to answer as many questions as we possibly can. Okay, and so then we got a question about what do we want to accomplish? I mean, like the CCRUN, again, like this addition of a really explicit equity focus into the CCRUN was something new. It's been a theme in CCRUN, I think, from the beginning, but really trying to make it more explicit and trying to really develop it so that we're in sort of engaging with communities. We're engaging with communities in a way that's as meaningful as possible to the communities. I think that was, to me, why what excited me about being able to do the competition was to sort of continue the mission of CCRUN, which is to sort of promote climate information, climate knowledge, climate sort of resilience capacity, but doing it in a way that is as meaningful as possible to communities on the ground, and to really and learn more about what that means and how to do that. So if we have we have a kind of, I guess, a learning goal to sort of improve our capacity to do engagement, to work with communities in ways that are meaningful, in ways that are very attentive to questions of equity. So other questions? That was actually, if that's the last question, that was a good one, because that was like the big picture, really thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Robin, if I could add, I think that maybe part of it also is really we are hoping to improve your capacity to reduce risk. to climate
Absolutely.
change and to adapt.
Yes, the unspoken assumption of of the whole purpose of CCRUN. I got another message. Oh, there was a question about doing a proposal submission team as part of developing a community of practice. So there's a question that came in that will all proposal submission teams be part of community of practice that CCRUN will organize? So yeah, no, that was actually, we've been discussing that. So originally we were thinking in terms of if we could do like perhaps a training or another a webinar that would be for everyone, not just for the folks who actually get the awards, but for all the applicants who apply for the grant, to do sort of a training or a climate information uses, climate services training. We definitely are interested in doing something like that. We haven't fleshed out it out yet because we were sort of, again, like focused on getting the competition itself launched for the first time. But that's a really good suggestion to sort of think about, and a good reminder that we'd like to do that. So thank you for that one.
Also, Robin, we do have a category for network building. So
Yes, we do. So a grant. So yeah, so thinking in terms of work that we're building out a network, we're developing a network that has capacity. Now I'm getting a weird message from my computer, which I'm turning off. Yes, so that is another, yeah, that space of network building is definitely something that we'd love to see a grant. We'd love to see an application in that space. All right, great. I think we've pretty much, if we've gotten, we're not quite at 8, but I think that given that it's the nighttime and people probably had a full day already, that maybe people are hungry for dinner or need to put the kids to bed. So I think we can wrap up. I see one more. If you completed your LOI but picked an incorrect category, will you be held against you? I'm not sure what, I guess the clarity would be an incorrect category. I don't think there's an incorrect category. I think the groups get to decide which category they want to pick. So I don't think there's a correct, I don't think we have that in our mind, like there's a correct category and only certain types of grants would go with certain categories. I think it's really like any project may need help in any of the categories is sort of how we were thinking about it. All right, then one more. If you submit would like to change the category you selected, yes, yeah, Katie, thank you, Katie. I was just going to say we do have some flexibility. And then just, I guess, there was a question. So someone asked if you put an LOI in and pick a specific category, and then you decide, you know, that category doesn't quite work for me, that's completely fine to submit. I mean, one of the big reasons to do the LOI is to actually just make sure that we're in the right ballpark, so that we're, you know, a group that's working maybe in an issue that's completely outside our space. Maybe it's a rural agricultural project, or it's not a 501(c)(3). Like there's like, just to really make sure that groups aren't putting the effort, make sure there's no group that's putting in the effort of writing a proposal where the LOI indicates that this just, it's really not at all in the wheelhouse of CCRUN. So that was sort of I think but it's fine if there's if between the LOI, yeah, I think that's a really good question. If between the LOI and the proposal, you as you're refining what you need in writing that proposal, and you're thinking, you know, actually the service category we really prefer is, you know, 2D instead of 1B, that's completely fine to make that change. Okay, good. So it's just, yeah, I think we're good. Unless I'm seeing any more questions, just maybe I'll give it another minute or so just to make sure everyone's questions get answered. And then I think we can probably say goodnight. Okay, they keep appearing. Let me see. One more. Nope, I guess there's not. Okay, I think we're, well, good night, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. And we have been recording this, so we will have a chance to, there'll be a chance to see that again. But also, again, just please reach out please reach out to Katie and with questions as they come up, as you start to really think about how to engage with the LOIs. Great. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
I think there's one more question.
Okay. Submit more than one proposal. I think probably just one LOI coming from one group would be, so I think if you're connected with more than one group, more than one 501(c), that would probably be fine to submit to. But I think for each, we don't anticipate getting more than one from a grant, from a specific 501(c). All right, well, I think we'll say goodnight then. Thank you, everyone.